Yeah. So do you consider I mean, the technology that you run in your own data centers, that's cloud-based as well? Is that how you define it? But it's private cloud?
I would define what we run as, I would say that we are a cloud service provider.
Mhm.
We're not providing utility computing, we're providing a cloud service. And by that definition, I would say that we have built a cloud. Our cloud is around the Dropbox ecosystem, though.
How would you differentiate between a cloud and a utility, though? I'm not quite getting that.
The way I would differentiate it is when I think about this major CSPs that are providing raw compute or raw storage with no value add on top of that, that to me is a utility. Think of it as an electric company. You get electricity coming in, you can buy a compute, you can buy some CPU, use that CPU. That's the way I would define the AWS cloud or the GCP cloud. And then I would say that Dropbox is a cloud service provider in the sense that we have to build a platform, and then we build a platform and we build this platform called Dropbox on top of that. And that is a service that we're outing back out as a public cloud provider in that sense.
You have your own cloud.
Yes.
Okay. What are the biggest challenges you face on your job, and how does data help you solve them?
The biggest challenges that I face within infrastructure, a lot of these are going to be around launching new technologies. And at the scale we operate, data plays a very big role in that. For example, we have millions of hard drives in production. These hard drives generate a tremendous amount of data about the hard drive themselves. We need to analyze that data. We need to understand the failure rates of hard drives at a massive scale. We need to understand and be able to predict when hard drives will fail before they fail. So it allows us to take proactive action against them. We need to understand how data placement and locality around the world plays back into our performance metrics. We need to understand what the applications are doing in production from a monitoring perspective. So we store an incredible amount of monitoring data as well, just about sort of the performance characteristics, the latency characteristics. How is the application performing once it's deployed? So data is fundamentally ingrained in how infrastructure works, because we have to use this for every piece of decision we make, all the way from financial models all the way down to what was the performance of that drive when we stored this bit of data on it.
Yeah. So, yeah, back to the drives and the performance of the system. You're collecting a tremendous amount of data. You're streaming it. You're essentially monitoring these working machines. So it seems like this is one of those great examples where it's really programmatic. People aren't involved in making decisions. You have a system that is tuning itself in real time using data analytics. Is that correct?
At a high level, yes. We have a stream of data that comes out from the drives that's put into a logging pipeline. The logging pipeline puts that into effectively and actually in the same data lake that everything else goes into. And then there are some jobs that run across that to look at the types of failures, and then generate tickets as needed back to the data center teams to replace drives. And then you can also do things, and this is how we work with our vendors from the drive side, is like we want to look at those drives and look at the failure rates over time, look at if they're matching up what the benchmarks that we had when we qualified the drive looks like. So we're using analytics from that perspective just to always make sure that in this case, like what we bought is actually working the way we expect it to work, and that we're not missing anything about the performance characteristics of the system. And so some of this comes from the analytics pipelines, and some of this comes from more of a time series database pipeline.
Okay. Hey, I want to ask you one more question. I want to ask you to step back and be a visionary for a moment here. Mm-hmm. So looking ahead over the next decade, how do you think data and data analytics will kind of change the world of business and even the world for people?
I think that right now in the world we live in, we're in the midst of unprecedented times in this global pandemic. I think that there is a huge amount of data and value that will be used as people start to work from home more and more and more. And we are, even at Dropbox, looking at that and trying to understand the user's behavior, because the user's behaviors, and I know my personal behaviors, I'll speak only for me, have changed substantially just since I've been working from home over the last few weeks or the last 8 weeks. And I fundamentally believe that we will see evolutions in products. We'll see products that no one thought needed to exist, and that will all be driven from the understanding of the behaviors we see via via the business intelligence, the analytics we're collecting. We'll use that to make new and better product decisions around just even in Dropbox. Like, how does Dropbox work better and better suited for a work from home workforce? I think those sort of things, those sort of problem statements are going to pop up more and more and more. I think that's probably the clearest advantage from if I think about Dropbox, from how data will change over the next 5 to 10 years for us, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. When I think about it, if people don't return to quote normal, if offices kind of become obsolete, and they might be in some cases, you certainly don't need the old storage lockers, the old file cabinets and things like that. And it could kind of drive the last wave of digitization, going fully digital, and then flying the coop out of the office. So that could be a pretty interesting transformation, and cloud storage is an essential element of it to make that work. So it's pretty cool. Is there something that could take us a little deeper on the cloud data platform?
I think that the biggest piece, what Snowflake has given us has been really getting the fundamental biggest use cases have been really around financial reporting data. I think has been the biggest win for us in the short that I'm aware of. I've gotten a little bit more involved in the last couple of weeks, but that's been the highlight over the last couple of weeks, has been just how much we've used it for financial reporting and making sure that we can surface the right information there.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, maybe give a little more color on that. Is there something about that technology and the way it's delivered that enables them to do things that they couldn't do before or couldn't do as well before?
When I think about the financial reporting data and the ways we're building dashboards using Snowflake, the really big value add for us has been how simple it has been for the business intelligence teams to use it to create these dashboards. Our current systems and our other data lakes and the other systems we have powered are powered by a little bit more complicated systems that are going to require deeper knowledge of the data sets as well as technology stacks. And what this has allowed us to do is remove the barrier to entry into data, as well as provide a way to create a gate to allow us to filter the right sets of data into it, as opposed to make a user base have to understand, hundreds of millions, if not billions of metrics. And this really gives us a way of curating the metrics pool and creating a very simple interface, which I think, is a company value of ours, is around simplicity, which is like a huge value add for the user of the system. Complex systems almost never result in someone producing the result you're looking for. So I think that Snowflake has really given and really nailed it for us on making sure that our user base is able to get exactly what they want by not building something that's overcomplicated for them, which is in some sense the way our rest of our data lakes work.
Mm-hmm. So in a sense, it's democratizing data.
It really does help democratize data for us.
And it doesn't require a data scientist to do sophisticated work, I guess.
Correct. I would go in one further and say it does not require deep engineering expertise of the product to make it work.
Oh, okay. Very good. So here we are in the middle of this crisis that's impacting people's lives in so many ways, impacting businesses, the economy, all of society. How are you seeing that impacted in Dropbox?
At Dropbox, COVID's been, it's all encompassing as it is for almost any company in the world, or all companies in the world at this point. I think of it as there's 2 or 3 major work streams. One is around people, just making sure that people are safe, making sure that people have the tools and technologies to be able to work from home. We had an excellent cloud strategy from our ITS teams, our technology teams on the internal side, around being cloud native and being cloud first as a strategy. And so that allowed us to make a move to work from home incredibly seamlessly. The entire workforce basically was home the next day, and we declared a work from home, and everything just worked. Now, my role on the technology side is head of infrastructure. This journey for me actually started late January. Our head of supply chain came to me and said, 2020 is not going to be a normal year. And for those who don't know, supply chain typically has pretty far reach out into Asia. We actually do a pretty deep integration of our stack all the way down into the vendors on the ODM side. So we have pretty strong relationships with the Asian companies that are building physical machines. So we started looking at supply chain, and we started looking and figuring out, okay, how do we get to tier 2, tier 3 commodities? Because we realize that things such as sheet metal even are going to be a scarcity around manufacturing. And so we've been diving in on that level from the infrastructure side. So this has had a fairly large disruption, a fairly large amount of work put in from the supply chain team just to keep capacity coming. And I think every company in the world with a supply chain right now is being impacted by that. And on the third, I think is, looking forward, right? Like we have to have a work stream around what does work from home look like, and how do you keep, so the mental health aspects of the workforce, how do you make sure that people feel cared for, feel connected, are able to maintain engagement back to the organization. And so to me, those are the big three things. Those are the things that we're really thinking a lot about right now.
Back to the supply chain thing. So you have a bunch of data centers. You are buying all of the storage equipment, the computers, the networking devices, all that kind of stuff, and outfitting them. Do you reach all the way back into the component vendors who put that together? It seemed like you were suggesting that, but that's really, I never would have guessed.
So we maintain relationships with about 7 to 8 different commodity vendors for key components. Think CPU. We were the first company in the world to deploy AMD at scale, for example. We were the first company in the world to deploy SMR, which is new drive technology, at scale in the world. So we have very, very deep supply chain and vendor relationships with the major drive suppliers, the major chip suppliers, major RAM suppliers. We have that, and that's part of the portfolio, and we touched on this earlier about sort of the vertically integrated stack. In order to get the economies of scale, you have to have that level of integration all the way up and down the stack. And so we maintain those relationships with the commodity teams. In this case, in COVID-19, we had to actually reach a little deeper into the supply chain so we could understand exactly what the impact to delivery schedules was going to be, exactly what the types of things, exactly when and where things were going to show up. Almost every week there's been something new. Shelter in place in the Bay Area put pressure on integration facilities here, which we weren't anticipating because most of the supply is coming from Asia. But we do some final assembly in the Bay Area for some of the data centers here. That caused a disruption in supply chain for a day or two while we had to figure out how do we compensate for that from an essential workers perspective. So the supply chain aspect has been a very large focus for the last 2 or 3 months, just to make sure that we're able to maintain the runway, maintain all of the things that make Dropbox stay powered and run.
So Andrew, I just want to thank you for being with us today. I thought there were some really cool insights, a lot of stuff I just didn't know. So thanks for sharing it.
Steve, thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed talking about data with you today. And until next time, thanks.
That does it for this episode of Rise of the Data Cloud. Thank you for listening. This episode is brought to you by Snowflake. To see how you can get secure and easy access to any data with near infinite scalability, visit snowflake.com.